Well, we are going to talk about guidance today. And I want to start with a little story about a businessman who was in a great deal of trouble. His business was failing. He had put everything into it. He was deeply in debt. He owed everybody. And things were so bad, he was thinking of ending it all. So as a last resort, he went to visit his pastor, his minister, and he poured his heart out, told his story. And when he finished, the minister had listened and said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a beach chair and your Bible and drive down to the beach and sit in the beach chair at the water's edge, open the Bible. The wind will ruffle the pages. That'll happen for a while. After a while, that'll settle down and the Bible will be open to a page. And I want you to look down at that page and read the first thing that you see. And that will be your answer. That will be what you need to do. So time goes by, and maybe a year later, the businessman comes back to see the minister, and the minister remembered him, but he brought his wife and his children. He was in a brand new designer suit. His wife was dripping in diamonds. His children were wonderful, and he pulled out an envelope full of money to give an offering to the minister to thank him for his great advice. And the pastor said, well, I'm curious. He said, congratulations, things have turned around. And he said, you did as I suggested? He said, absolutely. And he said, you went to the beach? He said, absolutely. You sat on that chair with the Bible in your lap? Absolutely. And you let the pages rifle until they stopped? He said, I did. He said, well, where did it stop? What were the first words that you saw? He said, chapter 11. There's the answer to your problems, right? Chapter 11. So we're talking about divine guidance today. And it comes in many forms. Jesus often prayed alone and spent long hours in silent communion, and those of us who even in the slightest degree have opened to the Christ consciousness in ourselves, in our own prayer time, so that we can stream and allow universal mind to flow in and through us, we can readily understand that while Jesus was in that silent communion with God, he was gaining power and wisdom and guidance to do the work he was called to do. Power and wisdom and guidance streaming in from divine mind. And today I want to share with you about guidance. It's a higher, far more seeing guide for our lives than, as Marty said in his prayer time, than the human intellect alone. It comes through universal mind, and it's in the world today. It's everywhere present. It's in the world in great power, and it's ready to be poured into you, into your life, into your decisions, into you in every way when you turn to it. So what I have for us to go over today is a process of prayer for opening to divine guidance. How many of you right now in your life, just by a show of hands, are experiencing something where you need to make a decision? So, you've got a choice before you and you want to decide on the best way to go. All right. Mr. Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, said, in seeking divine guidance, never be formal with God. God cares no more for forms and ceremonies than does the principle of mathematics care for fine blackboards. And I would say, or smartphone calculators, we would say today, right? The principle of divine guidance cares not what you ask for or how you ask. You cannot use it too often, and the more you use it, the more easily you use it, and the more pleasant its help becomes. We need to establish a practice of prayer so that we know how God speaks in us. And not that that's the same way every time, but when you cultivate a consciousness of listening within, when you cultivate a consciousness of asking for help and support and then opening to receive it, it's been my spiritual practice that I understand God speaks to me in the same way. I can hear the guidance each time it may come from a book I pick up or something somebody says, but it comes with almost a physical thing of energy that kind of comes in the back of my head and down through my neck and out through my heart with an assurance that I know, okay, that's the answer. And I think as each of us cultivate a practice of prayer, we find how God speaks in us most often. And then you can stay open to surprise things, happening all the time. I think most of us, at one time or another, have found ourselves in need of guidance, but every once in a while, I find that when my life is rolling along just great, and I think I'm firing on all cylinders, I'm on my A game, everything's happening, Spirit will drop in an idea, an idea for something new for my life. And it comes not so much as a great surprise, but as a great distraction. You want me to do what? You want to guide me where? You think I should what? And so the idea strikes my heart that God shepherds us. And so an idea comes in, and it's God shepherding us in that direction. I always think of God is known as the Good Shepherd. Jesus would refer to him as the Good Shepherd. And first when the idea comes, I think it feels too impossible, or too good to be true, or too big for the size of my current consciousness. You see the idea out there, and I'm thinking, my life is just great, just the way it is, and that may be for later years, that may be for when I retire, that may be for when I don't have a full-time job, or something like that, but the idea comes on so powerfully that it does pull me off track. It's distracting in a way when it comes, but initially I find I can blow past it. I can compartmentalize it. Great idea, God, thank you. That's for later, whatever. Grand idea, actually, but no thanks. I can't see how it would work out. I can't see how that would happen for my life. And then I go right back to the terrible twos. It's too much risk, too much energy, takes too much time, too much. No, thank you, just too much of everything. I'm on track with my life here. I know this new idea is a great thing that you're presenting to me, but I'm not ready. And then after a while, there it is again. Because we all, I believe, have these desires that stay in us. And that's how you kind of know it's a true desire from God. Because if it's just a passing fancy, it won't return. It'll come into your mind, and then it goes out, and you never really think about it again. But I think all of us have had things that have been in us for years, where we think, yep, I've always wanted to do that. And it's the Spirit of God presenting that idea. So after a while, it comes up again. It slips out of that compartmentalized place in our hearts. And then for me, the rationalizations of denial start again. Well, that couldn't work. And I just don't want to start over. And I don't want that much for my life. I don't want that much shift, that much energy, that much whatever. And I tell myself I'm really pretty content with how things are, and I am able to successfully push it down again, or let it kind of die a slow death, right? So the spark of that divine idea for guidance into some way to be more of who we truly are, just kind of sits there. Just kind of sits there, maybe for years, until one day I do have the courage to look down the road at it. Maybe life is slowed down some, or I'm just more open and receptive, or the distractions of life has ceased, and I can look down the road and ask, is this really what you have for me, God? Is this what you have for me? Is this the kingdom and the power and the glory that you are trying to release through me, as me? Could this much love, this much health, this much success, this much abundance, this much whatever, be possible for me, be what you're trying to release through me and into my life? And if so, how? How could this work out? Because I can't see how it could ever be. And not only do I not know what steps to take, I don't even know where to begin to become this guidance, this idea that you're releasing in me. Forget about what's the highest path or the best solution or the divine right outcome. I mean, I'm just here, and the idea is over there, and there's a big gap between who I am and what you're saying I can be. A big gap between who I am and the outcome of the decision I need to make. There's that, what's that movie where that guy steps out on that, air? What, Raiders of the Lost Ark, is it? No, you're not with me. Never mind. So again, all that you're presenting to me is a very grand and beautiful thing, but I just don't know how or where to begin. I don't know how to move this invisible desire from the unseen realm into the physical reality of my life. And then it dawns on me, there's a spiritual principle of divine guidance, right? There is a spiritual principle of divine guidance, and I don't have to figure it out all on my own. It's very popular right now, DIY, right? Everything is DIY, do it yourself. But when it comes to God, it's never DIY. You are never alone. There is always a guiding presence within you that knows. And so I want you to forget that DIY thing and know that we can call upon the spiritual principle of divine guidance. It's its own prayer, like the words divine order. It's just divine guidance. So let's put our hands on our hearts this morning for just a moment and think about those things you said that you're choosing and deciding about. And if you're not deciding about anything, you can always pray in advance, right? And we're just going to say divine guidance together. Divine guidance. And feel it. Divine guidance. Again. Divine guidance. And just like that, it's its own prayer. I lost my glasses, and I couldn't, and I a couple $100, and I couldn't find them, and I need them to drive at night. I only have one pair, and I've been praying for my eyes, so I won't need the glasses. But I lost my glasses, and then I went back to every place I thought they could be, and they weren't there. And I had driven my sister-in-law to an eye appointment. Funny thing, and I thought somehow they spilled out of my purse, maybe in her car, because I took her car. And now I went over to the house, I looked through her car, they weren't there. So I just said, all right, divine guidance. Either the glasses come back to me or I go to them. I'm guided to them wherever they are. And then you just let go and relax. And I got a little flyer in the mail about Kaiser is having some kind of designer glass thing fair at their Eureka campus, and I could go get new glasses. And I thought, well, okay, maybe that's it. That's coming up in a few weeks. But there was a knock at my door. It was my sister-in-law. She goes, I took the car to the car wash, and which she never does, and that my glasses were under the seat. They were where I thought they were, but they were just so camouflaged. And so she delivered them right back to my door. Divine guidance. You don't have to know the how, the what, the when, the where. Spirit may be presenting you with a new idea for your life, especially because we're at a retirement age, right? And things are changing, and we have now more time to do the things we've always wanted to do. But maybe you're still in your career and Spirit is presenting you with an idea for a new business to start. Or maybe you're catching an idea of a true loving companion to share your life with. Maybe you're catching an idea for a hobby that you want to scale up so it creates a stream of income for your life. Maybe Spirit is presenting you with the realization that you can be healed from those migraines that you've suffered from for so long. That you can be healed from that low back pain, that you can be healed from that insomnia and put an end to your suffering. And that maybe has been one that's been in you for a long time. And even though you've done everything humanly possible, you still haven't been guided to the fulfillment of that prayer, to be healed from those things. And so you ask God to show you. You call on the spiritual principle of divine guidance, just like that again, divine guidance. Divine guidance. And then you stay open to listening and to being guided and stay receptive. I think about one of the musicians that I worked with in Nashville is Karen Taylor Good. I don't know, she's not super famous, but she's won a Grammy, I think, or something for one of her songs, and she sang at the church, and she did a lot of special concerts and events for us. And she was a songwriter, and she's written more of her songs have been on radio play that she's written than she's personally performed. But anyway, she decided, like most artists, she wanted to get her music out to the world in a bigger way. which transfers into she wanted to sell more CDs, and earn a stream of income from her talent. And so she worked with this idea of divine guidance. She said, how can I do that, God? Divine guidance. And her answer came in the most surprising, unique, interesting way. And at first she resisted it. She thought, this can't be, this can't work. But what happened was, the Home Shopping Network contacted her to play her music on television while they sold her CDs. And she thought, she was terrified. She goes, what? Just sit there on TV and play my music? What if nobody buys? What if the sales are embarrassingly low? And the HSN had never done it before. And I don't know the backstory on how they chose her or selected her to be the artist. Maybe her songs are kind of ballad-like, so they could tell a story. She could tell a story around them on the breaks and then play some of the songs. Anyway, she let go of her resistance, and she went, and she made a fortune. And they've invited her back 2 more times, and each time she sold out of all the production that she had. And so, point of the story is, when you're open to guidance, you can't have your preconceived notions and opinions of how it's supposed to work out, or how you'd like to have it work out. Because Spirit has so much more goodness in mind for us than we could ever conjure up for ourselves. It's good to have an idea and to kind of hold that, but in this prayer of guidance where you say, show me, God, you kind of have to suspend your doubts and suspend your fears and suspend your know-it-all, I think this is the best way for me attitude, and become receptive to the way that God speaks in you. So what I have for us today is this process of prayer to open to divine guidance. That's a long lead-in, wasn't it? Let's get to the prayer, Cherie. And so there's 2 parts to it. The first part, when you're praying or asking for guidance, is to center yourself, to become still, as Marty said in his meditation, to get still and center yourself. And I like to do that by either memorizing or reading scripture. There are so many passages that are so helpful for guidance. You don't have to read scripture. You could read Rumi. You could read something that's inspirational to you. But there's so much power in the living word of scripture that's been spoken down through the ages for all the millions of people who have prayed those prayers and read those words, that it just adds steroid power to your request for guidance, I think. The psalmists are good for that. And so take again a minute. I'm going to just quote a couple of these, but keep your hand on your heart for the guidance and just listen to how the psalmist talked about guidance. You guide me with your counsel, and afterward you receive me with honor. We're being guided with God's counsel. I will instruct you and teach you the way you should go. What more could you ask for? Send out your light and your truth. Let them lead me. And from Isaiah, I will guide them. I will turn the darkness before them into light, the rough places into level ground. And so you let those words work in you. Let that infuse into your being. The meditation that I'm going to share with you after the service today, this woman talks about the light, and then she talks about the breeze, and then she talks about the mist, and she says you feel it touch your skin, like the breeze touch your skin, only then it goes through your skin to your muscle, and then it goes through your muscle to your bone, and then it goes through your bones into the cells, into every part of your body. And that's what we're doing here. We're letting these living words for guidance just infuse and permeate every part of us. And then part 2 is I like to use a well-used and well-loved prayer for guidance. And one of my favorite ones is in the book by Francis Folks, Effectual Prayer, and it's surprisingly called The Meditation for Prayer, Wisdom and Guidance. And I want to share it with you today and then walk back through it, demonstrating a few ways that it talks about how our consciousness wraps itself around guidance, the human self of us seeking and the spiritual self of us seeking. So just again, listen for this. This is kind of an experiential service today if you have this need for guidance. And listen to her words. And we have only one copy left of this at the back bookstore, but it's Meditation for Wisdom and Guidance. Dear Father, I come to thee like a little child, not knowing the way. I seek the solution of problems that I of myself am not able to work out. I have come to the crossroads and know not the path to take. I would have guidance beyond the human self of me, that I may make no mistake, that I may not have to retrace my steps, that I may take the path that leads to joy for myself and others, and to greater service to thee. My intellect would have me go one way. My emotions and desires pull me in another. But I know from past experience that none of these can be relied upon to lead me aright. My faith is not in them, for they do not get their knowledge from thy omniscience, but depend on people and conditions and circumstances to give them their leading. My faith is in thee, O omnipotent God, for in thee only is the knowledge of thy way to right decision. O thou omniscient mind, thou knower of all things, past, present, and future, make known to me your will. It is not my limited will that I would have done, but thine. For I know that in thy will for me is all the good that I could desire. Let the angel of thy presence guide me in a plain path, in a right way, a way that corresponds to thy will for me. Give me strength and courage to go forward. Give me faith to follow. O send out thy light and thy truth. Let them lead me. Beautiful prayer for guidance. And I love it because it speaks to that issue of, here I am, Lord. I can't figure this out. I need your help. And there's a part of me that wants to do this, but there's a part of me that's faithful and true, and there's a part of me that believes this, but there's a part of me that practices that, and so she says it so beautifully, and it's so reassuringly. I come to you like a little child, not knowing the way. I have come to the crossroads and know not the path to take. Throughout life, we're presented with choices and options, and we can choose to follow or not follow. But when it's truly an inspiration from God, a direction from God, a universal divine idea that's seeking to be released through us, it will come back around until it will never go away. It'll never go away. And so when you're ready to give it your attention, God's ready to support you in expressing it and fulfilling it. We have to, when there's a decision to make, we have to let go of the worry, the doubt, and the fear about the who, the what, the when, the how, the where, and the how much. The how much. And that works not only because we're letting go, but it puts us in a place of vulnerability, a place of innocence, a place of purity that's receptive and vulnerable and teachable. Teachable. Not knowing, remember Dorothy Pearson would always say, you know it with me, I am in the flow of I don't know, but God does. Yeah. So the spiritual principle of guidance that we're calling on, that we're opening to, is higher wisdom that can be released in us when there's no longer any struggle. So that first part of her prayer is let go of the struggle. Just know that there is one in you, but not of you, that's greater than you, that does know. I like to say we go first to God and then to external circumstances as God directs. But it's always go first to God. We may not know what to do or how to do it, but we begin by turning toward God and allowing the all-knowing mind in us that does know. Allow that to stream. And then in another line, she says, I would have guidance beyond the human, that I may make no mistake, that I may not have to retrace my steps. Sometimes we're immobilized in moving forward. Why? Because we're afraid of making a mistake, right? We're afraid of making the wrong choice, the wrong decision, and then we either have to suffer the consequences of that or start all over again. But you can't let that that's where you have to suspend your fear, your preconceived notions and ideas, and not interfere with the good that God is trying to express through you, but just stay in that listening, receptive mode. Then the next line I love, my intellect would have me go one way, my emotions and desires pull me in another, but my faith is not in them, for they do not get their knowledge from omniscience, but depend on people, conditions, and circumstances to give them their leading. And I always get this visualization of this. My emotions pull me this way, and my intellect pulls me this way, and neither one is from that stream of divine mind. Raise your hand if you've followed your heart totally, just followed your feelings into a really disastrous outcome. See, busted. And then raise your hand if you followed your intellect, your arrogance, your ego, your know-it-all certainty of everything into an equally disastrous place. Most of the men raise their hand on that one. Yeah. So she says, my emotions pull me this way, my intellect pulls me this way, but I know from past experience that that's not the final answer, that there is an opening to a stream of divine mind that is the answer. Mr. Fillmore says, when guided alone by our own impulses, our path seems rugged. We call it learning by experience. But there is a shorter, easier way, and that way is the recognition that there is a universal intelligence available that knows the way. And when we ask for its guidance, it will point out the very shortest possible route to the highest and best possible outcomes. How about that? There is a universal intelligence available that knows the way, and when we ask for its guidance, it will point out the very shortest possible route to the highest and best possible outcome. See, when I argue with my GPS, it's because I think I know the best way. I think I know the shortest route. I think I know how to get there fastest. Right? So that's the intellect, the human ego coming in saying, I know better than my GPS, than the satellite up in the sky that's pointing the way. I know better than that. So when I'm making a decision, I know more than universal wisdom that's above all, in all, and through all, and I argue with it. So know that there's a universal intelligence that does know the way. And then she asks in this prayer, omniscient mind, knower of all things past, present, and future, make known to me your will. It's not my limited will that I would have done. And the flavor throughout the prayer then becomes one of surrender, one of trust, and one of faith. Just letting go. Asking for divine guidance is asking for the best outcome, asking for the right path and the highest path. And this means in this asking that our own little plans for our life, our own little agenda for our life, our own little ideas for our life might have to be revised because there's something so much more magnificent trying to be released into our lives that we have to step aside and let it happen. We have to step aside and let it happen through us, by means of us. Lastly, she says, let the angel of your presence guide me in a plain path, in a right way. And I guess the question I get asked a lot is, well, how do I know? How do I know it's the right way? How do I know this is God speaking in me? And that comes, as I said, as a cultivation of our prayer practice, that we know that that's God. But you'll know it's the right way because you'll feel an incredible sense of peace. The human way, as Mr. Fillmore says, is a rugged road and a rugged path. But God's way is one of happiness and joy and peace. And you'll feel that peace that passes the rational understanding. And when you see the outcome, you'll see, I like to say, God's designer signature on it. Love God, and there's a designer signature on it because every detail is perfection. And then you'll know unmistakably that that's the right choice for you, that that's the right decision to you. And you'll enter into that experience in faith and trust, and the path will unfold in the most beautiful and divine and often surprising and delightful way. Divine guidance. Let's do it again. Put hands on our hearts and think about that situation in your life. Divine guidance. Together. Divine guidance. And I'm going to close by reading through this just one more time so now you can feel the beauty in this prayer for your life. So settle in for a moment and meditation for wisdom and guidance. Dear Father, I come to Thee like a little child, not knowing the way. I seek the solution of problems that I of myself am not able to work out. I have come to the crossroads and know not the path to take. I would have guidance beyond the human, that I may make no mistake, that I may not have to retrace my steps, that I may take the path that leads to joy for myself and others and to greater service to Thee. My intellect would have me go one way, my emotions and desires pull me in another. But I know from past experience that none of these can be relied upon to lead me aright. My faith is not in them, for they do not get their knowledge from Thy omniscience, but depend on people, conditions, and circumstances to give them their leading. My faith is in Thee, O omnipotent God. For in Thee only is the knowledge of the way to right decision. O Thou omniscient mind, Thou knower of all things, past, present, and future, make known to me Thy will. It is not my limited will that I would have done, but Thine, for I know that in Thy will for me is all the good that I could desire. Let the angel of Thy presence guide me in a plain path, in a right way, a way that corresponds to Thy will for me. Give me strength and courage to go forward. Give me faith to follow. O send out Thy light and Thy truth. Let them lead me. And so it is. Amen. God bless you, each one.